What is up, guys? It is the Scarlet Duelist back again with yet another deck profile that I'm confident calling pretty good. This is my zombie control deck profile. This is an awesome deck. If you're looking for something that doesn't break the bank but is still competitively viable and can play in the meta and kind of disrupt the meta, this is the deck for you. I think it's way written off as something that's, I don't know what to, people just don't think it's that good, I feel like. People are definitely fine calling it rogue, but I think that this could definitely, top a regional and so on. And I think some of them have. So definitely consider it if you're looking for something that's budget friendly, that's competitively viable, like I said. I know there's a new zombie archetype coming out. I think it's Idlick is how you say it, but that looks like it's doing pretty well in the OCG, and it looks like it's going to be really good, but I don't think the existence of that will suddenly make this not a viable choice. I really believe that they play differently, and I think that they're just going to be two different really solid zombie decks, and I'm not mad about that. I think that's really cool. So yeah, you're not going to see anything too crazy in this. I didn't alter the playstyle in some fandangled, wang-jangled way, but I've got some quirky techs in here that I think work and that make the deck at its most optimal, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So let's hop in. All right, first we've got two of our boss monster, Doom King Ballardrock. This one doesn't need to be run at 3 because you're not hoping to necessarily open on it. You'd really prefer to discard it or send it from the deck to the graveyard or even summon it from the deck using Glow Up Bloom. You're not really hoping to get this out of your hand. Like I said, there are times where that happens and you see one of these in hand, and that's why we've got some of our other tech choices in here that I'll show you. Next, we've got Necroworld Banshee. This one, once again, you'd rather just get it to the graveyard to use its effect, so you don't necessarily need to open on it, but if you do, like I said, there are lots of cards in here that can get it from your hand to the graveyard, but like I said, you don't need to open on this, so running it at 3 is unnecessary, because essentially it acts as another copy of Zombie World, so you don't even necessarily have to get this card to the graveyard in order to get your win condition rolling. As long as you see Zombie World, you're good to go. So you don't need to normal summon Necroworld Banshee. That's not really what we're rolling for. So that's not a phrase, rolling for. I made that up just now. We're going to start saying that more often. Next, we've got 3 Glow Up Bloom. This one's debated. I've seen a lot of people run it at 1 or 2, and I don't think that's enough because this really helps with making your win condition consistent, because truthfully your win condition is Zombie World on the field with a Ballardrock, and hopefully you've got lots of other interruptions and ways to stay in the game too. In order to more consistently get out your Ballardrock, you really need to see Glow Up Bloom, either to discard it or to send it to the graveyard. So that's why you want 3. That way you can do that as many times as possible. So that's why I run it at 3. Next, we've got Unizombie, which is your play starter, your main play starter. The only thing that sucks about Unizombie is it's a normal summon and it's vulnerable to having your turn ended by hand traps if you get hit by those. So you really got to be packing the 3 Called by the Grave too, which you'll see, because that sucks when that happens. Yeah, it just does. Especially going second if you're facing a board of negates, that also sucks, but we'll talk about that later. So Unizombie allows you to send from the deck and from the hand, all in the same turn, and that really helps with getting set up with Zombie World and a Ballardrock, if you get that right opening hand, which most of the time you do, because you have like, I think 10 to 12 copies of Zombie World. So as long as you can get that Glow Up Bloom into the graveyard, you're solid, because you're probably going to see Zombie World in one way or another. And in order to make that even more consistent, we also run our Shiranui Solitaire, which allows us to bring out our Unizombie right away. So essentially you're running 6 copies of Unizombie, which acts as another 6 copies of Zombie World or whatever zombie card you want to go to the graveyard, which I'll explain. Next, we've got Jack O'Bullen. This is really good at 2. I wouldn't run it at 3 just because it can get clunky and you won't see enough of your other good cards. But every once in a while you do get that clunky hand, and what this does is it unclunks it by allowing you to discard a zombie monster, let's say you open this guy in Ballardrock, what you'll do is you'll discard the Ballardrock, special summon this, normal summon another zombie, link into a vampire sucker. And as long as you also saw your zombie world, which you most likely will, like I said, you're running about a bajillion copies of zombie world. Vampire Sucker is going to bring back your Ballardrock, and boom, you've got your win condition rolling. And Vampire Sucker also will have some other cool interactions to allow your Ballardrock to activate, banish some things, negate some things, and so on. So really, really good, and that's what this guy helps us get set up. Just in case you get a bricky hand, he kind of unbricks it. Next, we've got one copy of Vampire Fraulein, I think is how you say this. Fraulein? I don't know. So that was really good. I really white guide that one, didn't I? Oh, the Vampire Fraulein. Oh, sorry guys, I'm super white. Anyway, anyway, yeah, this one is searchable with Glow Up Bloom, and you can get to Glow Up Bloom pretty easily and get this whenever you would need it. But this kind of saves you by battle and kind of creates this weird interactive never-ending loop where your opponent, if they're going to try to attack you, they're going to have to deal with the fact that this activates, and then you can activate a Ballardrock to banish that monster and so on. So it creates a really fun interaction and kind of locks your opponent out of being able to battle you, because if they do, you're going to banish their stuff with Ballardrock as long as you got them both on the field. So it's pretty interesting. It's some fun interaction going on there. Next, we've got one copy of Gozuki, one copy of Mizuki, and one copy of Shiranui Spirit Master. Mizuki, it's pretty good. If you can get it to the graveyard, you can bring back something. It's a monster reborn. Next, we've got Gozuki, and this is kind of another Foolish Burial, which is pretty cool. I've never found that I needed more than one of these. I've seen a lot of zombie decks pack in 2 or 3 of them. These guys are not your win condition, and they're not necessary to get there. So in my opinion, they're neat techs at 1, but they don't need to be at more than that. Otherwise, you're just going to open on these, and no way to get to your win condition, and that kind of clunks your hand up and so on. Shiranui Spirit Master is the only Garnet in the deck. Essentially, what it's there for is when you use the Shiranui, it's the trap, style Swallow Slash. What that does is it allows you to pop a couple cards and then banish a Shiranui from deck, and when you do, this guy pops another card. So essentially you tribute your Ballardrock, pop a couple cards, pop an additional card, and then your Ballardrock will come back in the standby phase anyway. So it's just a free bunch of pops. It's awesome. And next for our last monster, we've got 3 Ash. What's really cool about this is going first, when you get your setup, you've got your Ballardrock, you activate Ash to stop your opponent. If they have anything on board, you also will get to banish something because a zombie monster activated their effect. Also, what's fun is if you have Ballardrock and they activate Ash, you can negate that because a zombie monster activated its effect. So it's pretty nice to be able to do that, and also to get some plus. It's not really plussing, but some more interruption off of already interrupting your opponent with an Ash Blossom. And next we're going to move on to spells. So we've got 3 Zombie World, and really we've got Infinity Zombie World, because let's look at what we've got. We've got 3 actual copies, Terraforming, that's 4. We've got Uni Zombie, which essentially is another 3, so that's 7. Solitaire gets you to Uni Zombie, so that's 10. Then your Necro World Banshee, which gets you to Zombie World, which is 12. So you're basically running 12 copies of Zombie World. Scratch that, make it 13, because Foolish Burial can send your Necro World Banshee if you really need to. So 13 copies of Zombie World. You're going to see it. You're going to be fine. It's very consistent. The only downside to this deck at all is its dependency on having Zombie World, but that's why the deck creates so many paths to get to it. That way, if your opponent does out your Zombie World, you can get back to it pretty quickly. Next, we've got Super Poly, which is awesome in this deck. It allows us to just take away any 2 of our opponent's monsters and make the Metronet. This is an ad secretly, actually. Subliminal messaging. Dragon Necro, Nether Soul Dragon. All it takes is 2 zombie monsters, and it's a big body on board. Its effect is pretty irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. I don't think it comes up. I really have never used it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it just helps you get rid of your opponent's monsters for free because if Zombie World's out, no matter what they're playing is zombies. And then you just get rid of their 2 monsters and discarding pluses in this deck. Oh, and I forgot to mention this. I totally do have proxied super polymerization in this deck, but let me talk about proxies just very briefly for those that are new to my channel. Those that have seen me before know that I do this, but if you're new, I do proxy cards for my deck profiles, but only cards that I actually already own, and I only proxy the amount of copies that I own in a deck. I do that not because I'm a cheapo that won't buy cards. I already own 3 copies of Super Polymerization and a few other proxies that are in here. But what I do is I put proxies of cards in decks. That way I always have decks put together to play with friends, and I don't have to like take cards out all the time and put them in different spots. But just so you know, I will never proxy a card that I do not already own. It's just so that I can put the cards that I already own in other decks without having to move them around. So if that bothers you, sorry, get out of here, but I'm not changing for you. It's really convenient for me. But like I said, I would never, ever put a proxy of a card that I haven't purchased myself because that's pretty lame and kind of cheating. So yeah, anyway, let that be. Let's move on. Next, we've got Monster Reborn. It's just a good overall card in the deck. You like to recur, and when you do, you gain advantage over your opponent, like I said. So why would you not play this card? Next, we've got 3 Called by the Grave, some super cool looking proxied versions. You don't like getting hand trapped. Like I said, a hand trap can end your turn if you're relying specifically on Unizombie to get everything going. You're not always relying on him to get going, just to be clear, but sometimes you get that hand that doesn't allow you to have multiple play lines. So Unizombie, you're slapping it down and hoping and praying that that's going to work out. So this kind of is an insurance policy to make sure that you don't get ashed and so on. Next, we've got a couple draw power cards. Now, this is going to be weird, but bear with me. Allure, Upstart, Card Destruction. So Allure, we only have 1 copy because we don't have enough dark monsters, in my opinion, to be running more than 1 copy of Allure in order for it to be useful. You could substitute this with whatever you'd like, but I like it at 1, but if you don't, take it out. Next, Upstart, we don't really care about life points at the beginning. We're not an OTK deck, and we're also not trying to burn our opponent to win. We're just trying to basically control the game until they've run out of resources, and then we poke for enough damage to win, which is not hard to do. So Upstart's fine, gives us an advantage right off the bat. Next, we've got Card Destruction. This one's really nice because it can get rid of some resources in your opponent's hand. Yes, oh, I bumped the camera. Sorry about that. It can get rid of some resources in your opponent's hand right away. Maybe they open on an optimal hand and you're getting rid of that hand. That's pretty dope. Yes, it could replenish their hand with a better one, but that's a risk you take no matter what. But your deck specifically pluses off of cards being in the graveyard, which is why it doesn't matter if you get rid of some. Because you run enough multiples of the cards that are very important to see. But yeah, when your cards go to the graveyard, they're not actually gone unless you drew all your copies of Zombie World, which would suck. But hopefully that doesn't happen. The probabilities of that are very slim, but yeah, it happens every once in a while. But in my opinion, if that happened to you, you would probably not activate Card Destruction. So there you go. But I think it works really well on this deck and allows for some plays to start going off immediately while giving you more resources. So I think it's pretty awesome. Next, we've got 3 Rivalry. Rivalry? Wow, I actually did it. I actually was thinking in my head, all right, don't mispronounce this because I get tongue-tied on it all the time, and I caused myself to do it anyway by overthinking it. Rivalry of Warlords. I promise I can read sometimes. So Rivalry is really good in this deck, especially going first, which is what your deck would like to do. Because when you have Zombie World on the field, as soon as your opponent summons a monster, that monster becomes a zombie. So if they're not already playing zombies, they can no longer summon any more monsters. That's it. They're done. Unless they pop this somehow. But they're not going to be able to go into Nightmare Phoenix to pop it. A lot of decks rely on that as their back row removal in game 1. So basically, if you open Rivalry and you won the die roll, you took game 1, no doubt. Then you've got to side optimally for what you might be playing against and probably side for going second because they know what you're playing. They're not going to let you go first. And our last trap is Shiranui style Swallow Slash. You tribute one zombie monster, then target 2 cards on the field and destroy them. Then banish 1 Shiranui monster from your deck. And what happens is you banish Spirit Master, and when he's banished, he pops 1 more. So tribute your Ballardrock and essentially get a pop 3 cards, and then your Ballardrock returns next standby phase. So it's pretty awesome. All right, let's go straight into the extra deck. We're making good time here. We're at 15 minutes. That's pretty fast for me. If you're not familiar with that, I probably talk too much. Next, we've got Vampire Sucker, Linkuriboh, and Avendred Savior. So all of these create plays for Ballardrock when you're going first, because they have some form of reactive type of play. If they try to battle you, Linkuriboh is going to activate, which then triggers your Ballardrock to banish whatever they were going to battle you with, so they can't go straight into like Borreload or Borrelsword. Linkuriboh will stop them. Similar experience here with Avendred Savior. He has a battle-activated effect. It's during damage calculation. So this one I would say is more for going second though. Get your setup and then battle with Avendred Savior, then activate it, because they might not. If you make this going first, they don't have to attack it. But if you're going second, you can attack with him, activate his effect, then Ballardrock, banish, and so on. It's pretty dope. Next, we've got Vampire Sucker. This is the one that I would make going first the most, because it allows you to recur, then draw a card. So it just keeps your advantage rolling so that you can continue to play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And control the board. Next, we've got Nightmare Phoenix, just some, as I mentioned, back row removal that's already out there in your extra deck as long as you're not locked out of it. So really, really good. Decode Talker, just because it's a generic Link 3, I'm not like itching to get into my Decode Talker. You could substitute this with whatever you want. You don't really use your extra deck that much, like I said, so it's kind of just whatever you want to throw in. The main pieces that you want to have in here are these 3 at any number. I found that they're fine at 1, but if you want to run multiples, I've seen people run multiples of Vampire Sucker specifically. I get why, but I don't personally feel like it's necessary to win the game. So next I've got Yuki Anna, the Absolute Zero Mayakashi. This one is a really awesome Link monster. So basically, I'll just go ahead and read the effect. You can only control 1 Yuki Onna. We already know you can't control. Negate any activated effects of your opponent's banished monsters. If a monster is special summoned from the graveyard, or a monster effect is activated in the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can target 1 other face-up monster on the field, change its attack to 0, and if you do, negate its effects. You can only use this effect of Yuki Anna up to twice per turn. So basically, if your opponent's doing anything in the graveyard, they're going to get blown out. Not only by Ballardrock, but by this lady here. It's a really, really good card. Honestly, this card's like an anti-Salamangrate card. So yeah, it's really good. Especially being able to use that twice per turn. It's another negate. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Next, we've got Borreload Dragon. My crappy proxied version, but this one is good. I think it's a little better than Borrelsword in this deck in particular, just because your Ballardrock comes back in defense position, and it's often your only monster that you're resting on, so you wouldn't be able to use Borrelsword's OTK effect. But if you do have a troublesome monster that your opponent has, like let's say Avermax is getting really popular right now. I see a lot of people making an Avermax with, what's it called? Masquerana, so that it's like unbeatable. Borreload still lets you take it, and then you have the Avermax and so on. So that's pretty nice to just be able to out that by taking it, because it's really the only way, and it can't be targeted, but luckily Borreload doesn't target. So I think Borreload's going to be back into the mix and be more favored over Borrelsword and control decks personally. Next, we've got 2 Red Eyes Zombie Necro. Pretty much never make it, but on the off chance that you're like, whoa, I'm going to make a synchro play and just OTK, you can do that. I've never needed to, but it's fun to have. You've got space in the extra deck, why not? Beals, just because it's an unbeatable boy and it's really hard to out. Psyframe Lord Omega, on the off chance that you can go Wombo combo with Unizombie and stuff like that, you can make an Omega and rip a card out of your opponent's hand. That's pretty good. Shiranui, gosh, I can't talk or read. Shiranui, Shogun Saga, and Maya Defense, these names, I mean, come on. This one is also just if you want to push for damage. Again, I rarely need to, but it's not bad. Next is Lancelot. You could also substitute this for like a Dingirsu if you wanted to. I didn't even think about that till right now, but this is essentially an Omni Negate if you really need one. If you're itching to just push for that last bit of nope, you can make a Lancelot with your Ballardrox, or even with your Nether Soul Dragon here. Or even something that you stole from your opponent if you did do that. So yeah, and these are obviously your last ones that I talked about with Super Poly, just Super Poly targets to get rid of your opponent's stuff and then have some more materials for other things. But that's it, guys. That is the deck profile. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a really good deck and it's really fun to play. Pick it up. And if you do, use my TCG player link. It helps just support the channel a little bit. It's down in the description below. And if you're interested in this super awesome playmat that I'm shamelessly plugging right now, go ahead and click the link in my description there on playmats. I've actually got a new one out. It's artwork based on Gaia the Fierce Knight. So go take a look at that. Be sure you buy so many that I don't have to work a real job. And go ahead and like the video if you liked it, subscribe, and thanks so much for watching. See ya.